The battered metal door clanged shut behind Hannah, Hank Parker, as she stepped into the employee access tunnel of Neo Houston's Megadome. The air hung thick with recycled coolant and the distant roar of the crowd above. She glanced at her reflection in a cracked maintenance mirror, lean and muscular from her Marine days. Dark circles under piercing blue eyes that had seen too much. Those eyes. She'd caught alien patrons avoiding her gaze more than once. Sliding her keycard into the concession stand terminal, Hank donned her faded uniform cap and positioned herself behind the counter. Overhead, the massive curved screens of the Megadome flashed with advertisements, the current match stats, and betting odds. Another day serving overpriced synth beer to beings who saw Earth as little more than a quaint backwater, a Deathworlder curiosity in their galactic hierarchy. The Megadome itself was a testament to humanity's precarious position. Once a proud sports arena hosting global events, it now served as an undercard venue for interspecies matches. Its outer structure gleamed with alien tech retrofits, while its foundations remained mired in the sprawling slums of Neo Houston. Holographic advertisements flickered against its exterior, promising spectacles of alien strength and skill. As the evening crowd filtered in, Hank served drinks mechanically, her mind elsewhere. Between customers, she scribbled notes in her battered datapad, observations about human potential, and fragmented theories on fighting back. 3 years since her medical discharge, and the nightmares still came. Fallen comrades, battlefield triage under impossible conditions, hands slick with blood as she fought to save lives while plasma fire rained around her. 2 synth beers, human, a gruff voice interrupted. Hank looked up to meet the gaze of a Tauran, green-tinged skin stretched over rippling muscles. The alien immediately glanced away, a rumble of discomfort vibrating in its chest. "Coming right up," she replied flatly, filling 2 plastic cups from the dispenser. The Tauran's companion, a smaller, amphibious being with translucent skin, leaned forward. "Is it true what they say?" it asked in a bubbling voice. "About the human stare?" "Don't know what you mean," Hank replied, sliding their drinks across the counter. "They say no humans ever made that kind of eye contact before," the creature continued, deliberately avoiding her gaze. "The commentators call it Earth's mystical stare, some biological quirk of your species." The Tauran grunted and paid, pulling its companion away. "Superstitious nonsense," it muttered. But Hank noticed how it kept its eyes averted. Not for the first time. She wondered if there was something to the rumors. In the Marine Corps, instructors had drilled them on presence, the ability to command respect through posture, voice, and unwavering eye contact. On the battlefield, that intensity had served her well. Here, it seemed to unnerve non-humans in ways she hadn't expected. As the evening matches wound down, the massive screens above flickered. The standard advertisements vanished, replaced by a special announcement. Galactic Slap Federation, Earth preliminaries tomorrow, $100,000 to champion. Hank paused mid-wipe of the counter. The GSF, the newest sensation in interplanetary sports. 2 opponents facing off on a platform, taking turns delivering open-handed slaps until one was knocked out or conceded. Simple, visceral, and wildly popular across star systems. The footage showed 2 hulking alien champions squaring off, one roaring in a language her translator couldn't process. Her datapad pinged with a notification. Rent overdue. Again. She pulled up her ledger. A grim negative balance stared back at her. Military pension barely covered food. And Neo Houston's job market for ex-Marine medics was non-existent. $100,000. The thought formed before she could dismiss it. Her hand slipped to her pocket, fingering the stolen ID chip she'd borrowed from Martinez, an old Marine buddy who owed her a favor. Different name, clean record, no military background that might attract attention. "Can I really intimidate a 3-meter-tall Pelmorian?" she whispered to herself, meeting her own gaze in the reflective surface of the drink dispenser. The blue eyes that stared back held no answer, only determination. Morning came too quickly. The warehouse district at the edge of Neo-Houston's eastern slums buzzed with unusual activity. Makeshift barriers cordoned off a central building, a rusting, pre-war storage facility repurposed for the GSF preliminaries. Hank approached, her heart hammering against her ribs. She wore simple clothing, black training pants, a fitted gray tank top, and worn combat boots, the only footwear she trusted for proper grip. Flashes of her Marine training surfaced as she waited in line. Hand-to-hand combat drills, rapid response exercises, battlefield triage under fire. She'd been trained to stay calm while extracting wounded soldiers from active combat zones. Surely, she could handle a slapping match. Inside, the warehouse had been transformed. Rusted girders loomed overhead, draped with hastily installed maglights that cast sharp shadows across the crowd. A central platform stood elevated, simple, flat, surrounded by railing except for entry points on opposite sides. Alien spectators of various species crowded around, many interfacing with personal betting terminals. Registration was a blur. The stolen ID worked flawlessly. They assigned her to Platform C, fifth match. As she waited in the competitors' area, she studied her opponents, mostly aliens of various builds, a few humans with backgrounds in underground fighting circuits. All eyed each other warily, sizing up threats. "First time?" a voice asked beside her. Hank turned to see a slender being with iridescent skin and large, liquid eyes. Not a competitor based on their slight build. "That obvious," Hank replied. "I'm Mira," the being said, extending a four-fingered hand. "Just an enthusiast. I follow the circuit." Hank shook the offered hand cautiously. "Hannah," she said, using her full name to match the stolen ID. "Just looking for the prize money." Mira's eyes flickered with something unreadable. "Well, first match is starting. Watch carefully. Might learn something." Platform C, fifth match. Opponent, Jax Vor, Toran ex-wrestler. When Hank's turn came, she climbed onto the platform with steady steps. Across from her, Jax Vor towered, a mountain of green muscle, at least 7 feet tall with a neck as thick as Hank's thigh. His arms rippled as he flexed, drawing cheers from the crowd. "Little human should withdraw," Jax rumbled in broken standard. "Jax not want to break pretty face." The platform official, a spindly being with too many arms, gestured them to positions. "Rules simple," it announced. "Alternating slaps. Coin toss for first strike. No closed fists. Feet planted. 3 seconds to deliver after countdown. Knockout or forfeit determines winner." The coin, a gleaming disc embedded with shifting holograms, spun in the air. "Visitor calls," the official stated. "Scales," Jax grunted, naming one side of the coin. It landed on stars. Hank would receive first strike. "Choose to receive," she said immediately. Marines had taught her to observe before engaging. Let him show his hand first. The crowd murmured. First-timers usually took the opening slap, hoping to end the match quickly. Jax's mouth split in a wide grin, revealing serrated teeth. "Human smart," he chuckled. "Won't help." They took positions. Jax spread his massive feet to regulation width, leaning slightly forward, cheek presented. The countdown began. 3, 2, 1. His palm connected with Hank's face like a freight train. Pain exploded across her cheek, vision blurring momentarily. She tasted blood where her teeth had cut the inside of her mouth. The force knocked her back a half step before she caught herself, planting her feet again. The crowd roared. Jax raised his arms triumphantly, clearly expecting her to crumple. When she remained standing, straightening slowly, a hush fell. Now came her turn. Hank stood perfectly still, feet positioned in a subtle fighting stance, weight distributed optimally for balance and power transfer. She stared directly at Jax, making deliberate eye contact. Something changed in the Toran's posture. A barely perceptible flinch. His third eyelid flickered nervously. "Human stare!" someone whispered in the crowd, focusing all her intensity through her gaze. Hank moved forward. Drawing on her combat training, she transferred her weight, rotating her hips for maximum torque, and delivered a perfectly calibrated slap across Jax's cheek. The sound cracked like a gunshot. Despite his mass advantage, Jax staggered, foot sliding over the edge of the platform. His eyes rolled back, and he collapsed in a heap of green muscle. Silence. Then pandemonium. The crowd erupted in confused shouting. The official rushed to check Jax, then raised Hank's hand. "Winner, Platform C, advances to second round." As she descended from the platform, Mira appeared at her side. "That was unexpected," she said carefully. "Your technique, the way you focused through your eyes before striking. I've never seen anything like it." "Just lucky," Hank muttered. But the whispers had already started spreading through the warehouse. "Did you see her eye contact? She's not blinking. The human stare is real." 3 more matches followed, each ending similarly. Hank would receive the first blow, absorb it, then deliver a precisely calculated counterslap, preceded by her unflinching gaze. By the semifinals, betting odds had shifted dramatically in her favor. As she collected her preliminary prize money, 2 uniformed figures cornered her in a service corridor. GSF Earth enforcers, wearing the distinctive insignia of Pelmorian security forces. "Human," the taller one said, its gray skin mottled with age. "The finals aren't meant for Earthborn. Withdraw or suffer consequences." Hank felt her pulse quicken, marine instincts kicking in. She assessed distances, vulnerabilities, escape routes. "I didn't come here to bow out," she replied coldly. The shorter enforcer reached for what appeared to be a shock baton. Hank moved instinctively, ducking under its arm and twisting, catching the alien in a practiced headlock. The taller enforcer lunged, but froze when Hank's gaze locked with its own. For 3 heartbeats, neither moved. Then the enforcer stepped back, making a strange clicking sound deep in its throat. "This isn't over," it hissed, as Hank released its partner and pushed through, continuing down the corridor with her prize money secured. Outside, in the gray morning light, she counted her winnings. Enough to make a dent in her overdue rent, but not enough to change anything. The Earth Championship qualifiers were in 3 days at the Hyperspiral Arena. The prize, entry to the Galactic Finals, and 10 times today's payout. That evening, Hank made a call she'd been avoiding for months. The small holopad in her apartment projected a stern-faced woman with close-cropped silver hair and a posture that screamed military, even in civilian clothing. "Parker," Lieutenant Sarah Cav said, her image flickering slightly. "Thought you'd fallen off the grid for good." "Need your help, LT," Hank replied. "Got into something." A raised eyebrow. "The slapping tournament. Already saw footage circulating on underground channels." Of course she had. Nothing escaped Sarah Cav's notice. One reason she'd been the most respected drill instructor in the Corps. "I'm going for the championship," Hank stated flatly. "Need to refine my technique." Cav studied her former subordinate silently. 3 days isn't much time," she finally said. "Meet me at the old training facility. 500 hours. Don't be late." The abandoned Marine training facility on Neo Houston's outskirts had become Cav's personal domain after retirement. The security systems still recognized her credentials, and the automated maintenance routines kept the essential systems functioning. For 3 grueling days, Cav pushed Hank beyond her limits. They focused on 3 key elements: stability, torque generation, and the psychological component, what Cav called the stare. "It's not mystical nonsense," Cav explained, circling Hank as she practiced stance transitions on an unstable platform. "It's pure psychological warfare. Most species evolved with predator recognition systems. Direct, unwavering eye contact triggers primitive fear responses. especially from a species known to survive on a death world. They drilled for hours on stabilizing techniques, practiced wrist position for optimal slap impact, and refined the subtle weight transfer that maximized power delivery. Cav attached weights to Hank's arms, made her run endurance circuits, and forced her to hold eye contact while reciting battlefield medical procedures, building the connection between focus and performance. On the second day, as Hank collapsed exhausted onto a bench, Cav handed her a water bottle. "Why are you really doing this?" the lieutenant asked. "It's not just about the money." Hank wiped sweat from her brow. "Maybe I'm tired of serving drinks to beings who think we're just primitive curiosities." Cav's expression remained neutral. "There are easier ways to make a point. Maybe I need to prove something to myself," Hank admitted after a long pause. "After Proxima Centauri, after failing to save those Marines." Her voice trailed off. Cav nodded once, understanding. "Then let's make sure you don't fail this time." On the morning of the Earth Championship, Hank arrived at the Hyperspiral Arena to find it transformed from its usual mid-tier sporting venue to a gleaming showcase. Holovid spotlights tracked competitors' movements. Streaming feeds broadcast to dozens of star systems. The audience, a mix of Earth citizens and off-world visitors, filled the stands to capacity. In the preparation area, Hank encountered an unexpected face. "Impressive preliminaries," Mira said, appearing beside her with press credentials now prominently displayed. "Thought I should be honest about my interest." "You're a reporter," Hank realized. Mira nodded. "Investigative journalist. Been tracking GSF operations for months. There's more happening behind the scenes than most realize." Before Hank could ask further questions, the announcement came for the first match. She was scheduled third against Rick Ironjaw Stevens, an ex-legionnaire from Vex Prime Colony, famous for his ability to absorb punishment. Watching the first two matches, Hank noted the higher caliber of competition. These weren't warehouse amateurs. They were seasoned fighters with established reputations. The platform itself was more sophisticated, equipped with biometric scanners and impact sensors that displayed force metrics on the arena's massive screens. When her match was called, the announcer's voice boomed across the arena. "Our next competitor, a surprise qualifier from the warehouse circuit, Hannah Parker." The crowd's reaction was tepid, mostly curious murmurs. And her opponent, the man who's never been knocked down, with 17 consecutive victories, Rick Ironjaw Stevens. The audience erupted as a powerfully built man with a shaved head and a thick beard entered the arena. His exposed arms and chest were covered in colony military tattoos. Betting odds flashed on screens. 5-1 in Stevens' favor. They took positions on the platform. Stevens stood a head taller than Hank, his stance wide and confident. "Lady, you've got guts," he said as they waited for the official, his voice carrying a Vex Prime drawl. "But this is where your streak ends." The coin toss went to Stevens. He chose to deliver first, the confident choice of a fighter who believed in his knockout power. As they squared off, Hank centered herself. The platform felt solid beneath her boots. The crowd's noise faded to background static. All that existed was this moment, this opponent, the space between them. Stevens's slap came with frightening speed, an earth-shaking palm that connected with devastating precision. Pain exploded across Hank's face, the impact triggering a flash memory of a battlefield injury. For a moment, she was back on Proxima Centauri, shrapnel tearing through her leg as she dragged a wounded Marine to cover. But she didn't fall. The training with Cav had prepared her body to absorb the impact, to maintain position despite the force. As her vision cleared, she saw Stevens' confident smile falter slightly. Now came her turn. Hank adjusted her stance minutely, finding perfect balance. She locked eyes with Stevens, blue drilling into brown. Unlike alien opponents, he didn't immediately look away, but she saw the subtle changes, pupils dilating, sweat beading on his forehead, a barely perceptible twitch at the corner of his eye. He blinked, once, twice, then shifted his weight unconsciously. Hank struck. The Marine Stair Slap, as Cav had named it. A precisely pivoted palm delivered with maximum torque, channeling her entire body's kinetic energy into a single point of impact. The crack echoed throughout the arena. Stevens's head snapped sideways, his body following in a staggering spin. He collided with the platform railing and collapsed, the arena floor shuddering slightly beneath his weight. Silence fell, then erupted into chaos. The impact force metrics flashed on the screens, breaking previous records for the weight class. Medical drones rushed to Stevens as officials verified his condition. Moments later, he regained consciousness, shaking his head groggily as medics helped him to his feet. To everyone's surprise, he approached Hank and extended his hand. "Never seen anything like that stare of yours," he said, voice slightly slurred. "Like you were looking straight through me." The victory propelled Hank into the championship match against the Earth Division favorite, a modified human from the orbital colonies with enhanced musculature. Their match followed the same pattern, but Hank's technique had evolved. Her stare had become more refined, more focused. The enhanced human fell in a single exchange. As Earth champion, Hank qualified for the Galactic Finals on the Pelmorian homeworld, scheduled in 3 weeks. The prize, 1 million credits, and the title of Galactic Slap Federation champion. That evening, as celebration buzz still lingered, Mira met Hank at a quiet corner of the arena's exit tunnel. "We need to talk," the journalist said, voice low and urgent. "I've been investigating GSF for months. There's evidence of match fixing, forced disqualifications, and mysterious accidents befalling competitors who weren't supposed to advance." She produced a small data cube, projecting a series of code fragments and financial records. Betting algorithms designed to manipulate odds, payment records for problem management. This goes beyond sports. It's systematic exploitation. Hank studied the projections. "Why show me this?" "Because you've already disrupted their system. A human wasn't supposed to become Earth champion, especially not one with your particular intensity." Mira's eyes reflected the holographic data. "They'll try to stop you before the finals." As if confirming her words, both their comm devices pinged simultaneously with breaking news. The previous Earth champion had withdrawn from last year's Galactic Finals due to unforeseen medical complications, just hours before competing. "That timing seems convenient," Hank muttered. "Exactly." Mira pocketed the data cube. "I need more evidence to expose them. If you continue to the finals, it gives me the perfect opportunity to access their central systems." "You're suggesting I become bait?" Mira's expression remained neutral. "I'm suggesting we both fight back in our own ways." That night, as Hank returned to her apartment, she noticed the subtle signs of intrusion. A security seal slightly misaligned. Environmental controls adjusted by 2 degrees. Nothing was missing, but the message was clear. She was being watched. The weeks leading up to the Galactic Finals passed in a blur of intensive training. Lieutenant Cav pushed Hank even harder, incorporating psychological exercises designed to strengthen her mental resilience. "The Pelmorians are telepathic dampeners," Cav explained during one session. "Not true mind readers, but sensitive to neural patterns. Your stare disrupts their ability to predict responses. It's why they find it so unsettling." They practiced against holographic simulations of Pelmorian fighters, focusing on their unique physiology and fighting styles. Meanwhile, Mira fed Hank intelligence about potential opponents, security protocols, and arena specifications. 3 days before departure, Hank received an anonymous message on her datapad. "Withdraw or suffer consequences beyond imagination." Attached were medical scans of the previous Earth champion, showing evidence of subtle neurological tampering rather than natural illness. The journey to the Pelmorian homeworld took 18 hours via commercial transport. Hank spent most of it in meditation, centering herself according to Cav's techniques. Fellow passengers gave her a wide berth. News of the human stare had spread across networks. The Pelmorian capital rose like a fever dream against the crimson sky. Crystalline spires connected by floating transport tubes. Anti-gravity platforms carrying beings of countless species between levels. At its center loomed the Celestium Dome, a massive, bioengineered megastructure where the galactic finals would be held. Hank's designated accommodation, a sparse but functional pod in the competitors' district, offered little comfort. The gravity felt slightly heavier than Earth standard. The atmosphere tinged with unfamiliar minerals that made her throat itch. The evening before the finals, as Hank reviewed her opponent profiles one last time, a shadow fell across her doorway. A GSF security team, led by a tall, imposing Pelmorian in formal attire, stood in the corridor. "Earth Champion," the Pelmorian said, its three small eyes regarding her with cold calculation. "I am Cortec Var, Earth Director for the Galactic Slap Federation. A word, if I may." Against her better judgment, Hank allowed them entry. Cortec's security team positioned themselves around the small space, while their leader settled into a chair that creaked under his 3-meter frame. "Your advancement has been unexpected," Cortex stated, examining her with clinical detachment. "A human rising through preliminaries, becoming Earth Champion. Most unusual." "I follow the rules," Hank replied evenly. "Won my matches fairly." "Indeed." Cortex's mouth formed what might have been a smile on a human. "However, tomorrow's opponent is Graka the Unblinking, our 8-cycle consecutive champion. The betting markets have certain expectations." The implication hung in the air between them. "Human," Cortex continued, leaning forward. "Step aside. Our champion must remain undefeated. You are dangerous, not to him, but to the natural order we've established." Hank met his gaze steadily, channeling every ounce of her marine training into her expression. Cortex's 3 eyes fixed on hers for a moment, before the central one twitched slightly. Looking away. "I don't intimidate easily," Hank said quietly. The Pelmorian's posture stiffened. He reached for a security baton at his belt, activating it with a low hum. "Perhaps a demonstration of what happens to those who disrupt our affairs." In one fluid motion, Hank slapped the baton aside. Sparks flew as it clattered against the wall. One arc of electricity jumped toward her face, illuminating her eyes, which never blinked, never wavered. For a heartbeat, the room froze in tableau. Then Cortex rose, mandibles clicking in what she recognized as nervous agitation. "If you can't stop her fairly, remove her by force," he muttered into a communicator as he departed, security team falling in behind him. "Champion in 5 minutes." The overhead speakers droned moments later. The Celestium Dome exceeded every expectation. A colossal arena with seating for 120,000 beings. Its upper reaches dotted with zero-gravity viewing modules for VIP spectators. The platform stood at the center, larger and more elaborate than any Hank had seen, equipped with stabilization fields and impact sensors that would broadcast force metrics across thousands of worlds. The competitor's entrance tunnel hummed with tension. Hank stood alone, breathing steadily through Cav's centering exercises. Around her, other planetary champions waited with their entourages, some eyeing her curiously, others deliberately looking away. "In position," Mira's voice came through her earpiece, barely audible. "Ready," Hank confirmed softly. "You?" "Security systems more complex than anticipated. Working on access to broadcast controls? Be careful out there." The announcer's voice boomed across the dome, introducing champions from dozens of worlds. When Hank's name was called, she stepped into the blinding lights to a mixture of curious murmurs and scattered applause. Then came Graka. The Pelmorian champion emerged to deafening roars, a tricephalic, 3-headed behemoth, standing 2.5 meters tall, his muscle-laced arms rippling with augmented power. Each of his three heads moved independently, scanning the crowd, the officials, and finally, Hank. The announcer's voice reached fever pitch. 8 consecutive cycles undefeated, never blinked during competition. The destroyer of champions, Greca the Unblinking. A violet aura seemed to shimmer around the champion as he approached the platform, causing minor temperature fluctuations in the surrounding equipment. His three heads hissed in harmonized alien tongues, inciting the crowd to greater frenzy. As they took positions, Greca regarded Hank with naked contempt. All three mouths curved into identical smirks as officials explained the rules, standard procedure, but performed with excessive ceremony for the galactic audience. The coin toss went to Greca. He chose to slap first, the champion's prerogative, a display of confidence in his knockout power. They squared off. The dome fell silent. Billions watching across countless worlds held their breath. Greca's strike came with blinding speed, his palm 3 times regulation rap force, enhanced by genetic modifications that maximized impact delivery. It connected with such ferocity that bone splinters echoed through the platform's sensors. The sound amplified throughout the dome. Pain unlike anything Hank had experienced exploded across her consciousness. Red sparks swirled at the edges of her vision. Her head snapped sideways with such violence that for a moment, the medical drones hovering at the platform's edge activated their emergency protocols. But she didn't fall. Swaying slightly, feet planted exactly as Cav had trained her. Hank absorbed the impact, slowly, deliberately. She raised her head and locked all 3 of Greca's eyes into her single human gaze. The arena hushed. Even the ambient systems seemed to quiet. Hank's training flooded her with clarity. Cav's meditation techniques, pushing pain to the periphery. Adrenaline sharpening her focus to laser precision. She centered herself in this moment, channeling every ounce of her battlefield experience, every memory of fallen comrades, every slight against humanity into her unwavering stare. Greca's third head wavered, almost imperceptibly. Its central eye dimmed for an instant, something no one had ever witnessed in competition. Whispers raced through the stands. Impossible! No one holds eye contact with Greca. Now came Hank's turn. She set her stance, remembering every drill, every repetition under Cav's watchful eye. Her feet planted with perfect stability. She rotated her hips to generate maximum torque. Every muscle aligned in sequence, transferring energy from ground to legs to core to shoulder to arm. The stair thunderclap, as Cav had named it, combining full-body kinetic chain with absolute psychological intensity. Time seemed to slow. Hank saw Greca's aura flicker as uncertainty registered across his 3 faces. She struck with precision, born of countless hours of practice, her palm connecting with his lower jaw with mathematically perfect form. The impact created a cathedral-like boom that resonated throughout the dome. All 3 of Greca's heads convulsed simultaneously, violet blood spraying in 3 distinct arcs. The champion's massive body spun in a complete rotation, crashing through the platform's edge barrier and into the anti-gravity harness netting below. Silence reigned for a heartbeat, then 2. Then, pandemonium erupted. The force metrics on the arena screens flashed impossibly high numbers before glitching into error messages. Spectators leapt from their seats in disbelief. Commentary booths across thousands of worlds erupted in multilingual chaos. Hank stood alone on the platform, blood trickling from her left ear, chest heaving with exertion. She raised her hand in victory, overwhelmed by the shockwaves of her own power and the deafening response of the crowd. But the moment of triumph was short-lived. The dome's primary screens flickered suddenly. The championship broadcast replaced by a series of rapidly cycling images, holographic documents showing GSF's match-fixing code, financial ledgers with Earth Champion manipulation line items, recorded audio of Cortec VAR ordering sabotage of previous competitors. Security footage appeared, showing Cortex attempted intimidation in the Neo-Houston warehouse, followed by similar scenes with other planetary champions. Evidence of drugged competitors, sabotaged equipment, and rigged matches played across screens that normally showed only sanitized spectacle. "What you are witnessing," Mira's voice announced across the dome's speaker system, "is the systematic corruption of the Galactic Slap Federation. For 8 cycles, champions have been manipulated, matches fixed, and billions of credits stolen through fraudulent betting algorithms." The crowd's mood shifted from celebration to outrage. Alien spectators who moments before had been placidly betting now howled in betrayal. "We've been duped! Take down GSF!" Security forces hesitated as planetary champions in the stands began converging toward the control areas, many brandishing veteran credentials from their respective worlds' military organizations. Cortec Var, attempting to flee through a service corridor, found himself surrounded by galactic security officers who had materialized via emergency teleport. They secured him with tri-laser restraints as he stammered, "You cannot arrest us. We are GSF." Medical drones retrieved Graka from below the platform, black-eyed and battered. The former champion fixed his gaze on Hank and uttered, "Human, your eyes, they stripped me of power." In a brief, grudging moment of respect, he activated his personal holocommunicator, confirming Cortex's arrest on live feed before being escorted to medical facilities. Throughout the dome, security teams liberated detention cells where other competitors had been held, fighters who had threatened to expose the corruption or refused to throw matches. They converged on the platform, a spontaneous gathering of planetary champions united in solidarity against exploitation. Mira found Hank amidst the chaos, supporting her as exhaustion and injury threatened to overwhelm her. "We did it," the journalist whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Your victory gave me the distraction I needed to access their systems. Every fixed match, every manipulation, it's all exposed now." As medical drones assessed Hank's injuries, Graka approached once more, moving stiffly under his own power. The crowd fell silent as the defeated champion stood before Hank. Then, in an unprecedented gesture, he bowed all 3 heads before departing the arena, a sign of respect no Pelmorian had ever shown a human. 6 months passed. Under galactic security oversight, the reformed Galactic Slap Federation prepared for its next finals, to be held on Earth as a gesture of restitution. New regulations ensured transparency in betting algorithms, and strict anti-corruption protocols prevented any return to past abuses. In Neo-Houston, the abandoned Marine training facility had been transformed. The Stair Academy now occupied the renovated complex, its entrance adorned with a simple, holographic sign displaying its motto, "True Strength Through Fair Focus." Inside, Hank moved among students from dozens of worlds, correcting stances, demonstrating techniques, and teaching the mental discipline behind the now famous human stare. What had begun as a desperate bid for rent money had evolved into a philosophy that combined marine reality, martial finesse, and fearless focus. "Remember," she told a class of mixed-species practitioners, "the technique is nothing without the mental component. Eye contact isn't about intimidation, it's about absolute clarity of purpose." In her office, headlines from across the galaxy adorned one wall. GSF reformed under new leadership. Earth hosts galactic finals. Marine medic revolutionizes interspecies competition. A holoframe cycled through images. Hank and Lieutenant Cav demonstrating techniques. Hank receiving Earth's Interplanetary Service Medal, the first graduating class of the Academy. Mira visited often, having risen to prominence following her exposé, Eyes of Truth, exposing GSF's dark code. Now heading the GSO Journalism Council's sports division, she ensured transparency across interplanetary competitions of all kinds. "Any regrets?" she asked during one visit, watching students practice on the training floor below. Hank considered the question, absently touching the small scar that remained on her cheekbone from Graka's strike. Sometimes, I wonder what would have happened if I'd stayed at that concession stand. Earth would still be a backwater curiosity, Mira replied. And billions would still be manipulated by corruption they couldn't see. One afternoon each week, Hank volunteered at the Marine Hospital, working with veterans suffering from combat trauma similar to her own. She shared techniques for focusing through flashbacks, for channeling painful memories into constructive purpose. The nightmares don't disappear, she told them. But you can meet them with open eyes. Not everything had been resolved. Rumors circulated of a clandestine Black Hand coalition, former GSF officials and betting syndicates working to establish underground circuits beyond regulatory reach. Galactic security remained vigilant, but the threat of corruption returning in new forms lingered. Standing on the Academy's rooftop at dawn, Hank watched the orange sun rise over Neo-Houston's transformed skyline. The Megadome, once a symbol of Earth's subordinate status, now stood as the centerpiece of the planet's renewed standing in galactic affairs. She thought of the long journey, from desperate ex-Marine to reluctant fighter, to champion and now mentor. Of the strange power of human eye contact that had unnerved even the most formidable alien opponents. Of the courage it took to stare unflinchingly at both external threats and internal demons. Below. The day's first students arrived, a diverse collection of beings united by the desire to master themselves as much as their opponents. Among them walked Graka, now an instructor specializing in Pelmorian techniques adapted for other species. Hank took a deep breath of the morning air, her gaze fixed on the horizon, clear, unwavering, prepared. Whatever challenges might come, human or alien, she would meet them with open eyes,